One. Well, hey, Dave Melenda here, Positive Polarity Podcast. Hope things are going awesome for you this week. I have three words that we're going to unpack today, and then there's a twist to those three words. And so I am excited to jump into this one today. And if you have any interest in improving your people, your performance, or your productivity, then you are going to definitely be in for a treat today. Now, the caveat here is we're going to do it with a smile. And I was like, what? No, wait a minute here. Now, so I'm like, all right, I got to figure this out. So I'm honored to be hanging out with Conor Cunneen. How are you today, sir?
Hey Dave, I'm in good form yourself. Really glad to be here on the show. Thank you.
Awesome, no worries. So you are the Irishman Speaks. That's your handle, and that's what you go by. You're a keynote speaker, educator, and business humorist. I have to say, I've never heard of a business humorist. So tell me, what's a business humorist before we get started?
Right. Well, the way I think this might give an example of the way it works. When I'm on Zoom, Dave, I'll often introduce myself as saying, "Hi, I'm Conor Cunneen, Irishman Speaks." Oh, sorry, this side, is it? Okay. All right. So just to get the kind of bit of humor into it. And
Sure.
basically, when I talk about being a business humorist, it is a concept that I've got where I provide really good business content, but I'll often do it by providing some humor or a humorous message or a humorous anecdote to reinforce the message that I'm saying. So it is not comedy. I mean, I do a little bit of open mic comedy, but I'm not particularly good at it because comedy is different to humor.
Sure.
And what I try to do is I provide to get my audience smiling 3, 4, or 5 times, or laughing 3, 4, or 5 times during a keynote. It changes
Sure.
the dynamic in the room. It helps to
Yeah.
reinforce the message and helps them to remember what the Irishman said. Oops, sorry, the Irishman said. Okay.
Yeah, no, and I think that that's really important. I mean, when we speak around the country as well, I have that same thought process. And I know as a person in the audience, if I'm not engaged out of not necessarily that you have to make me laugh every minute, like you said, but there's got to be some humor in there. There's got to be some levity. I feel like there's got to be some, enjoyment and excitement. Otherwise, the message probably doesn't land as well. Have you always done that? Have you always had that humorous part from you?
Well, I suppose partly because I'm Irish. I mean, we're famous for, I suppose, for being good humored, although angry sometimes, and also have a good way of telling stories. So when I came over here to the States about 25 years ago, I actually tell people, Dave, I've been working on my Chicago accent for 25 years now. Teach
Yep,
yourselves now are the brightest tool in the shed kind of thing,
sure.
the sharpest tool in the shed. But
Yep.
when I came over, I realized that people did like the Irish brogue. Our way of telling stories was a little bit different to the normal way you do it in the States. And then as I realized that some of the humor I was putting together made people laugh, I worked harder on trying to make that impactful. And as a result of that, I've actually created a course on adding humor to your presentation. And what that does is it helps people just to connect better with their audience and reinforce the message, as I said previously.
Yeah, and I think that's really the key, whether it's a keynote in front of thousands of people or you're on in a boardroom with a few people on your team. If you're not connecting with your audience, again, regardless of size, I feel like there's can be some real disconnects there. So I'm assuming stories are important for you. Have you always been a good storyteller?
I've got better at it over the years. I uh, have, I think, got an Irish knack of getting some stories together all right with good messaging in them. And when I left the corporate world, I started doing I got involved in Toastmasters, Dave, and I'm still actually involved in Toastmasters with a professional speakers Toastmasters group here in Chicago. And they do 5 to 7 minute speeches, international speech competition as well, where stories are really important. And I crafted a few stories there that allowed me to win Chicago Land Toastmasters competition a couple of times. And I found that the ability to just be able to hone stories ever so slightly, change the wording, polish them up a little bit, does help you to connect better with the audience. So what I try to do is I try to make sure my stories are relevant and
Sure.
appropriate. And if I can drop a little bit of humor into it as well, then we're really making a good connection with the audience.
That's awesome. And I want to go back to what you said, because so you kind of started in corporate. We have a lot of people that follow this show, Connor, that are in that corporate. They're trying to find a way to get into the entrepreneurial world. So what did that journey look like for you? Because I tell people there's no right or wrong way, but hey, listen to the different ways, because some people quit their job today, start a new company tomorrow. Some people make this last over years, some people a lifetime. So how did that transition from corporate to entrepreneur work for you,
Well,
Connor?
Dave, I speak a lot in my business topics about having clear goals and clear vision. And when I came over here to the United States 25, 26 years ago, I did not have a clear goal or a clear vision that I would end up as Irishman Speaks and be
Okay.
speaking to improve people, performance, and productivity with a smile. What happened was that came over with a company called Unilever. They wanted me to go back to Europe after a few years. There were some changes in the organization for various reasons, family reasons in particular. My daughter had just started in Wake Forest in North Carolina. I didn't want to mess up her life again, kind of thing. I said no to Unilever. So as I say, I told them to get stuffed when they wanted me to go back to Europe. They told me get stuffed. So we had a mutual stuffing. All right.
Yep.
And that's actually how I left the corporate scene. And I kind of thought about it for a little bit. And I said, you know what? I want to just do my own thing. So I started doing my own thing initially, offering some consulting services to food manufacturers and food service organizations in Europe about the United States market. I was asked to speak at conferences. I was getting really good responses, partly because I was providing good content, but good stories as well. And I suppose a little bit of energy. And then I got involved in the Toastmasters. Then I got involved in speaking to people who were in job search, and I still do that. I mean, 25 plus years later, I still do a lot of work helping people in job search. Not an income stream, but just a real passion of mine. And what I found was some of the messages that I had really connect with people who were going through difficult times. And that really helped me to hone some of my messaging and ability to connect with audiences as well. So it was not a planned move initially,
Sure.
but when I did leave corporate, I, over a period of a couple of years, I did morph then into Irishman Speaks, and that's who we've got today. And the mission is to
Sure.
improve people performance and productivity with a smile.
Gotcha. Did you know then when you were in corporate and they stuffed you and you stuffed them, did you know that your next step, or were you planning on being an entrepreneur, being in business for yourself? Was that kind of in your mind, or were you still not sure about
No,
that?
it wasn't in my way, because I mean, like, if you take it that I was working with a very large organization, Unilever, multi-billion-dollar organization. I had done well with them in Ireland, in the UK, and the US, and I was on a pretty good corporate path. But there was reorganizations which kind of made me think, I'm not sure if I want to stick with this. And then when they said go back to Europe, I said no to that. So it wasn't something that happened uh, organically initially, but once I left the corporate land, I said, all right, I want to do my own thing. So over a period of time, that's when we morphed into the Irishman Speaks then.
Awesome. That's so cool. So for people listening, again, there is no right or wrong way to transition from corporate into owning your own business. This is just one of his, he's got his way, I had mine. Everybody has their way. So hopefully you can take something away from what Connor said. So fast forward the tape then. So now you have this Irishman Speaks business. Where did, day one, you're opening your doors. I mean, it's kind of funny because a lot of people think all you got to do is put a shingle up, open your doors, and people are going to flock after you. So, did that happen for you, or do you remember how you got your first customer?
Well, I do quote Ralph Waldo Emerson in some of my work, and I say Ralph Waldo Emerson said, if you build a better mousetrap, they will come. Now,
Okay.
I then say that Ralph Waldo Emerson might have been a great philosopher, but he knew nothing about marketing and sales, because you got to tell your audience about your product and about your
Yeah.
service. So Because I come from corporate and had good, I suppose, contacts in the food service area and food marketing, etc., I was able to, and I had the heritage of working in a large company as a vice president of marketing. I was able to get some events initially, and it does take time. I mean, Dave, you know yourself, like, I mean, unless you're the first person to walk on the moon, you're not going to become famous overnight in the speaking
Right.
business, or you land
Yep.
a plane on the Hudson. Okay.
Sure.
And
Yep.
interesting thing about that one, the Sullenberger, isn't it, who landed the plane on the Hudson? He
Yep.
became the doyen and the kind of icon for a number of years.
Right.
But there's a number of other people who were on that plane who've also made a living out of this. The co-pilot or first officer, whatever he's called, he's made a living out of it. The guy who was also the last person to get off that plane, I can't remember his name, he
Sure.
also is a keynote speaker now. So
Okay.
it's amazing the way things happen. But so if you want to become a keynote speaker, I'll give this advice to the ladies or women who are listening to this. The best way for you to become a keynote speaker successful overnight is be the first woman to land on the moon. You're guaranteed gigs straight away. So
There you go. Exactly. Well, and I think that, getting into our topic of people, performance, and productivity. So these are obviously three large components of all businesses. Whether when you think about people here, Connor, are you thinking about the team or are you thinking about the customer, or does that encompass both when you're talking about people?
it encompasses both, Dave, and it's primarily about what I say to people is, what do you want to be famous for? What do you want to be famous for? Now, I don't mean famous like Kim Kardashian or Lady Gaga or something like that. I mean, when you leave the room, what is it you want either the customer, your client, or your co-workers to say about you? And personal branding, whether you're in a large corporation or whether you're just an entrepreneur in your own small business, your personal brand is going to determine the level of success that you have. And it's going to determine the amount of referrals that you get and the leads that you get, because people want to do business with people that they like. And I think it's really important that your listeners understand what it is they want their customers to say about them when they're not in the room, what they want their customers to say about them when they're down at the local Starbucks, they're down at the local pub, and they're referencing someone. Oh, I know someone who can provide that service or that product.
Yeah. And I think, Connor, I think that's a big blind spot for a lot of people because, if you ask, I always say, if you want to know what people think about you, ask them or
Yeah.
ask somebody else, because we have this exploded view of our mind. Oh, we rock. Our team's the best. Our company's the best. Our product's the best. And then you look and their Google reviews are low. They don't have a lot of good repeat business. There might be some customer experience issues. So, I mean, do you see that as a blind spot a lot for entrepreneurs, that they maybe think their business is better than it actually is?
Well, I think, I mean, I'm the only person who'll give myself 10 out of 10 for everything. You're the only person, Dave, that'll give you 10 out of 10 for everything. And the rest of the people, they don't know what they're talking about, okay? But
Sure. Yep.
but I think it is a blind spot. What I say is that know what you want people to say about you, what you want them to say about you. So that's my brand promise as such. Now, that's only the brand promise. The question is, do I actually work and generate the brand experience to live that brand promise? So maybe the simplest example I'll give is United Airlines. They always talk about the friendly skies.
Mhm.
And I suppose in fairness to them, they're as good or as bad or as every other airline out there. But there's a lot of people who would not associate the friendly skies with United Airlines. So what United are saying is one thing, what customers are saying is another thing. And if you've
Sure.
got a big disparagement or a big chasm between those two, you've got a problem. So what I say, Dave, is the best way to start building your brand is to know what you want them to say. Now, then you got to figure out is, how do I create that experience that will have people saying that about
Yeah.
you, about me, or whoever else is looking for to create a great brand.
Sure. And I think it's got to be, I mean, I know for my Positive Polarity brand, I only want to hear the good, so, but yeah, it's interesting. Like, I don't know how you are, Connor, but when I do a keynote or get some kind of, speaking, and I get the feedback, I get 5, 5, 5, 5, 4, 5, 5,
Yeah,
my focus goes right in on that 4, and I'm like, what? you
yeah,
know so
yeah.
there is that approach of overdoing that negative piece as opposed to looking at the whole thing in general, which I think that is like that performance piece. When you talk about performance, what is it that you're referring to, how to improve that performance? Is that, again, the team? Is that the bottom line? Is it a combination of everything? What encompasses performance for you?
I think it's your ability to interact with people and to get the most out of people, for them to appreciate you as a co-worker, as a colleague, or as a vendor or supplier, and for you to be able to build a relationship with them. And I do have a concept that helps people to create that kind of a better workplace and better environment. And it's based around an acronym that spells CHAPS, CHAPS, Dave. So it's a simple little concept, but if people actually implement it, it will help to create a better workplace, a better environment. And the bottom line is, if I can make people feel more comfortable and more confident in me, I'm going to interact better with them. They're going to interact better with me. So it's about working well with people and creating a good relationship with people without going over the top and saying everything is hunky-dory, etc. You got to be demanding at times, but you got to do it in a fair and equitable way as well.
Sure. And I think that's a hard balance for leaders to find, right? I notice leaders are either all negative and we got to work, 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 work faster, work harder. It's either that, or it's the other extreme where everything is, peaches and ice cream and roses, and, everything's
Yeah.
perfect. So do you notice that it's one extreme or the other? And then how do you get somebody to kind of be more in the middle on that?
Well, I think we all have our various biases and prejudices, etc. And what I do believe is that you've got to, in general, you've got to treat people the way you would like to be treated yourself. Now, that is a cliche, but there's a lot of truth in it. And what I say, for instance, is that I talk a lot to manufacturing organizations about employee engagement and employee retention, etc. And the question I ask the management in that company, who a lot of whom do have problems with employee retention and engagement, is I say, all right, what is it that you want your new employee to say when they go home tonight? So they've come into work for the first day. What is it you want them to say about the company when they go home and talk to their spouse, their kids, their parents, or whatever it is?
Right.
And I think you can't be kind of too rosy tinted about this, but I think what you do want them to say is, I like those people, and it seems to be a good place to work with. They care about me and the other people. And no matter
Right.
what kind of organization you're working in, I think you can create that kind of an environment. But it goes back to what I was saying about the brand promise. To be able to create that environment, Dave, you need to be able to think about it. All right, those people are coming in. What do we want them to say when they go home this evening? If we don't
Sure.
think about what we want them to say, we may not get them saying the kind of things that we do want them to say, that will encourage them to come back into work tomorrow, that will encourage
Right.
them to say good things about the organization and become brand
Yeah.
ambassadors for the company.
Yeah, wow. We just did a post on LinkedIn about, if you want to really understand your team, ask them how they feel on Sunday night. And it's either they're looking forward to work, or it's like, oh my gosh, I'm sick to my stomach, I'm stressed,
Yeah,
I don't like going in, there's going to be conflict or whatever. And let's be real. Gallup said that right now there's less than 1 in 3 show up engaged to do their job every day. So
yeah.
the cards are stacked against us. So we're going to take a break, and when we come back, I want to unpack that CHAPS piece, because I feel like that's a really great way to build the engagement within the team. So we'll be right back.
All right.
Awesome. Welcome back. We're hanging out with Conor Cunneen, and we are talking to the Irishman Speaks. And so hopefully his accent, it's not the Chicago accent, right? It's actually from Ireland, or you switched over now to your Chicago?
Yeah, we're still working on the Chicago accent. You know, funny thing, we were talking about branding earlier. And when I talk about branding, Dave, to organizations, I say about you got to have the right brand for the right organization. And you do professional speaking, I do professional speaking. And what I tell my audiences, and sometimes is that I actually come from New Jersey. And they kind of go, forget about it, Conor, for I'm bad New Jersey accent. But I say, when I wanted to become a keynote speaker, I realized that the American audience really does like the Irish brogue. So I should have brought it here to the show. I wasn't thinking we might be doing this. Is that what I do is I take out of my pocket a little mouth spray that is branded instant Irish accent mouth spray. And I tell my audience that I take this every morning, and it now gives me the Irish brogue, which allows me to create the
there you go.
Center. But the message I kind of try to get across to them is that you got to have the right kind of branding and message for your audience. That's a goofball way of getting across the message there about the Irishman Speaks and what's appropriate for your audience.
Absolutely. Well, I love that question. What do you want to be famous for? And that again ties into this, discussion. So you have this concept called CHAPS, CHAPS. So let's go through those. I want to kind of unpack those for the listener today. So what is first of all, where did the concept come from for you?
The concept came from my research and understanding of what it takes to build a good relationship and a good workplace, etc. And over a period of time, I honed it into this acronym CHAPS, CHAPS. We'll go through that in a few minutes' time. I do believe, Dave, and I think you probably would appreciate this as a speaker as well, that if you've got a number of different concepts you want to give people, how do you get them to remember it? So I tell my audience, well, I'm going to talk to all of you chaps now about 5 things that will help you to create a better workplace. And then I kind of pause and I say, sorry, there's chapesses in the room as well. Okay, so ladies as well. All right, but what I want to do is, if it's okay with you, I'll refer to everyone here as chaps because it will help us to remember the concept.
Sure.
So the idea, Dave, is that I try to encourage people to appreciate the power of goals. And these chaps provide 5 micro goals. So if I was to ask you, how do you feel when you achieve a goal? What would your response? Give me a few words that how you feel when you achieve a goal.
Accomplishment, relief, excitement.
Yeah. Right. And the other kind of words I get all the time, like accomplishment, relief, excitement, positive, upbeat, etc. And the reason why that happens is we've got neurochemicals in our brain. One of them is dopamine, and dopamine is the feel-good chemical that kind of kicks in when we achieve a goal. So what I would like to do for you as an audience today is to provide you with 5 micro goals that you can do on a daily basis that will help you feel better, but will also help your colleagues to feel better. So the 5 micro goals. We'll ask you another question, Dave. Would it be fair to say that when someone compliments you, you feel better about yourself?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And would it be fair to say that if someone compliments you, you kind of appreciate that person a little bit more?
Yes, for sure.
Okay, so let's turn it around the other way. Would it be fair to say that if you compliment someone, they're going to feel more motivated?
I would hope so. Absolutely.
Yeah. And if you compliment someone, they're going to appreciate you a little bit more as well. Yeah. Right.
Yes.
So let's take that as a micro goal and say the first micro goal that I will implement tomorrow, and I'll try to do this on a daily basis, is that I will compliment one person, C in CHAPS. And the idea is that if I compliment one person, because I've set it as a micro goal, I will hear myself say, hey, I've complimented one person. The dopamine kicks in for me. I feel a little bit better. But obviously the person that I've complimented, they're going to feel way better as well. So it's a win-win situation. And that's the power of these micro goals. I mean, it's quite likely, Dave, that you actually do compliment people on a regular basis. But what I say with each of these little elements of CHAPS is set them as a micro goal, and I'm going to feel better deliberately. The person I'm dealing with is going to feel better deliberately as well. And it'll build better engagement, better workplace, better relationships, both at home and in the workplace. So that's the first
Yeah.
element of the CHAPS acronym, compliment.
And that's awesome. I have a question for you because I love, this is an antidote to, low engagement in the company is by
Yeah.
complimenting people, catching people doing something right rather than catching them doing something wrong. But I've run into people, Connor, that have said, why would I possibly want to compliment them for doing their job? How would you respond to that? Because there probably is one listener right now somewhere going, why would I want to compliment my team? They're just doing what they're supposed to. How do you kind of respond to somebody like that?
Well, the way I respond to that, Dave, is that the person who's asking that question, would you prefer to go through the whole week without getting any words of approval from your boss? Or would you prefer to go through the week getting approval now and again from your boss or from your superiors? Human beings are not logical. Okay, we need emotional reinforcement. We need supportive commentary from time to time as well. And one of the ways that you will get a better reaction from people is if you make them feel appreciated. I do sometimes get a comment as well from people like, well, Conor, what if I can't find some way to compliment people? And I kind of get a little bit hairy at that one. They say, well, maybe the problem isn't the people, it might be you.
Yeah.
And then I tell them, look, you can always find some way to compliment someone. You could say something like, whoa, your hair doesn't look as bad today as it did yesterday. You know?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh,
But
that's awesome.
it's compliments are part of our human psyche. We
Sure.
need emotional reinforcement. We need to be told we're doing a good job. Even though if we believe it, but we need to be told it as well.
Well, and I think the best part about these five is if I look at them as we go through them is, for the listener, think of how much does this cost, right? These are really like no cost, super, super low cost. I don't even think there's cost involved. I mean, if you have a team and they're not producing where you want them to be, you can either use a whip to create more work, or you can use your tongue to compliment them and really engage them in a different way. So that's what I love about these. So thanks for sharing these, Connor. So compliment is the first, and then if we jump into the H, what would that be?
Right. Just one other quick point about the
Yeah.
compliment. One of the things that people, I do get that sometimes people are unsure as to how I can start complimenting people. But I think one of the simple questions you could do, let's say you're involved in a manufacturing organization or in a restaurant where they have a daily huddle, kind of get together for 3 minutes kind of thing. One
Yep.
of the simple questions that will allow you to compliment those people is ask the question, what did we do well yesterday? And you're bound to get some comments from some people. It might take a little bit of time for them to respond initially over a couple of days. But if you keep asking the question and if someone says, well, we did a good job on the table 13, there was a complete mess on that table, we were able to get it sorted out, etc. Then you say, fair play to you, well done. Things as simple as that. So
Yep.
if you're looking for ways to compliment people, ask the question, what did we do well yesterday? And you will get the opportunity to say, kudos, well done. And when you say that, you're going to get a faster response tomorrow when you ask that question. What did we do well yesterday?
That's
So
awesome.
the
Awesome.
first element of the
Perfect.
compliment. H
Yeah.
in the CHAPS acronym, Dave, is about here. Here. And the basic idea here is that you've set yourself a micro goal that I will hear the words thank you today. I will hear the words thank you today. Now, quite likely, in the last few hours, someone said thank you to something for something you did, and it kind of went over your head. But if I set myself a micro goal that I will do something to deliberately hear the words thank you from one of my work colleagues tomorrow, what do I have to do? I've got to do something positive for that work colleague. What happens then? The work colleague thanks me. So I hear the words thank you. I realize I've achieved another micro goal. I feel slightly better about myself, but the work colleague that you've done something for feels better, feels more appreciated, appreciates you more because you did something for them. Again, it's part of the CHAPS acronym that it makes
Sure.
it a win-win for you and for your work colleagues and will help you create a better work environment.
Sure. Is it also work, Connor, to kind of flip that where I'm going to hear myself say thank you more to be more appreciative? Is that part of that, or is that completely a different scenario?
No, I think it's the same kind of idea. And if you can hear yourself saying thank you a few times during the day, it means that you've, in a sense, I mean, when you say thank you, you're appreciating someone as well. So again, it's
Right.
kind of a win-win situation there. But
Okay.
I think it's very important in personal relationships as well to say thank you on a regular basis.
Sure.
And when you do that, you're just continuing to build that relationship or reinforce that relationship a little bit more.
I don't know what happened to those words, please and thank you, but that's how I was raised. And like it just seems, I don't know again if it's a generational thing. I don't know what exactly it is, but boy, just not I just don't see it or hear it very much. So these just seem to be really simple. So thank you. Thank you for sharing that one there. So then the A part of chaps, what comes to mind for that?
Right. So A is, as I tell my group, Dave, is A is for a dress. And as I say, by a dress here, I do not mean that little pink chiffon outfit with the sparkles that I was seen wearing on Facebook over the weekend. That should not have been published, Dave. Okay. By address here, I mean address people with their name when you're in conversation with them. And you and I and everyone else probably listening here can recall situations where you've been at some event where there's a conversation going on in another part of the room. You don't know what has been said in that conversation until someone mentions your name and your ears pop up kind of thing. And you've no
Sure.
idea what was said before or after. But that is just one example, I think, of where it allows me to say that the most important word for you when I'm talking to you is Dave. The most important and impactful word when you're speaking to me is Conor. And
Mhm.
if we can remember that the best way or one of the best ways to make a connection with your people, with your customers, is to address them with their name, it will help you to create a better connection with them. I mean, a simple example would be, Dave, you go to the local grocery store at the weekend, you go up and the kid from the local high school is there on the cash desk and you say, hey, Bob, how are you? And Bob looks at you stupid saying, how does he know my name? How does she know my name? He's forgotten he's got his bad job. But
Yep.
because you mentioned the word Bob, he pays more attention to you. He will
Yep.
maybe have one or two words with you if he's not too grumpy a teenager and wish you the best when you're going out, etc. So what I always say to people is if you understand the power of Bob, every time you're in conversation with someone in future, you want to make a connection with them, just call them Bob.
Sure.
No, that doesn't really make sense, does it? Call them by their name, all right?
When in doubt, call him Bob, right?
That's right, yeah.
That's the A part of chaps.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, to personalize that type of information, Connor, so important, I think, for us in today's world. It's going so fast. So I think it's like being in a different country and all you're hearing is the language you don't understand. And when your ear does hear your native tongue, it sure perks up and you start trying to find that individual, especially if you're lost or in some kind of distress. So use their name whenever possible. And again, what a great simple spot there. So
Yeah. And
um,
what I do say, Dave, there
yeah,
is, I mean, you and I were both in the same kind of business. We've got to kind of connect with the event planner and get the business as well. But when you're in sales or when you're doing an interview, for instance, going for a job, once or twice in that conversation, mention the customer's name or the interviewer's name, and it will help you connect better with them. When you've left that room, they're not sure why I feel a better connection with that person. They may not just appreciate the compliment they hear and the address, etc. But those simple little techniques will help you to pinch that sale faster and will help you to get the job interview as well, I would think.
Sure. That's awesome. Cool. So as we then head to the P part, what is the P part in CHAPS?
Right. P is about positive. And the micro goal here is that I will use a positive word or a positive phrase at least once tomorrow when I'm in conversation with people. And the way I just briefly address this is that if you can get into the habit of using positive words like amazing, brilliant, cheerful, delightful, energetic, friendly, Guinness. Hey, Guinness is a positive word for Irish people, Dave. What happens after a while is that it's like we've all seen Debbie Downer and Danny Downer, her twin brother, and the way they suck the energy out of the room. You can push energy into a room or into a conversation. And one of the ways of doing it is by using positive words or positive phrases. And I do believe that if you take that kind of a concept, along with some of the other elements of CHAPS, after a while, it is quite likely that your work colleagues or your customers will say positive words about you, like, hey, he or she is amazing, brilliant, cheerful, delightful, energetic, friendly. Let's go for a Guinness or whatever your beverage of choice is. But you can create that kind of a vibe or an atmosphere by treating people well, using positive words, and by addressing them with their name. So that's the compliment. Hear the words thank you. Address people with their name. P is for positive. And the final one, Dave, is S, and S is for smile. And the goal here is to put a smile on someone's face tomorrow. And if I put a smile on if you put a smile on someone's face, what are you going to do back? You're going to smile back, Dave, yeah? It's a natural human reaction. So the idea here is that I'll set myself a micro goal that at least once a day I'll put a smile on someone's face. I do say when it comes to the corporate environment and all those weekly meetings that everyone has got, and everyone comes into the corporate room or into the boardroom and they're sitting in the same seat that have been sitting in for the last 22 years kind of thing. Except for the people in marketing, they get turfed out after about 6 months kind of thing. But the financial guy is there for the last 22 years. But one of the things I do suggest, Dave, is that a simple thing, if you're having regular meetings, the first thing that should go on the agenda is a joke. And by a joke now, I mean something that will get people smiling. And I do think that the joke that gets the most groans or gets the what kind of, oh my God, that's a terrible joke. I don't mean offensive or anything like that. That's actually the one that will create the best kind of a reaction. And if you're dealing with the colleagues on a regular basis at regular meetings, I do think a very simple way to change the vibe in the room is a one joke that will just get people smiling, and now we can go on and with the rest of the meeting, etc. It's a powerful tool that not enough people, I said to all my clients, I know half of them just discount it, but the other half have come back and said, hey, that really does work. And it does make a difference to the vibe and the atmosphere in the room.
Sure. All right, you got to give us one joke, make us laugh.
Right. Do you know the funny thing is? People say to me, you can't tell us a joke, and I can never tell a joke. But I'll give you a little quick example of the way I use anecdotes and stories to tell a message. So one of the groups I speak to is manufacturing, safety conferences, etc. Okay, and what I tell people that when I'm doing the program on adding humor to your presentation, that telling anecdotes can be very, very useful. And anecdotes where something went slightly wrong. So when I'm speaking to manufacturing groups or safety groups, I say, all right, you've got to come into work every day and you've got to make sure you stay safe. My definition of safety is not one that I actually came up with myself. I just heard it from someone. It's that you come into work with 10 fingers and toes, you leave with 10 fingers and toes. No, to do that though, you've got to pay attention to what is happening around you. And I'll give you a little example of where things might go wrong. A couple of months ago, I was collecting my darling granddaughter, Maggie, from soccer practice. She's 6 years of age. We put Maggie into the back seat of the car. My wife sat into the back seat of the car as well. And then, being a crazy grampy, I sit into the back seat of the car as well. After a couple of seconds, Maggie looks over and she says, Grampy, you should be driving the car. So I said, I want to stay here. Grampy, drive the car. So I get to, I said, okay, I'll drive the car. I get to come out of the car. Problem, we're on child lock. Okay? So I've got to phone my daughter, who's already left the parking lot, to come back and open the rear doors of the car to allow me to go into the front seat of the car. Now, that's an example of what I talk about here, about telling a brief little anecdote, but it relates to my audience. And what I say to the audience is that, gang, you've got to be aware of your surroundings. And if you're not aware of your surroundings, you're going to end up in trouble. And what I like to say to the group, Dave, is that with the things like the car seat and the kid in the back seat, tomorrow when you're going to go to work, you may well actually have your kid in the back seat of the car. When you're going to work, think about, all right, what are the child locks that can cause me trouble in the workplace? When you're at a traffic light and you look over and you see a mom or a dad and they've got a kid in the back seat of the car, say to yourself, what are the child locks that can cause me trouble at work or cause my colleagues trouble at work? So that's a simple example, like of something that, a little anecdote, not necessarily a joke. I rarely tell jokes. I just kind of try to use humorous stories to reinforce it. And when I do that, that's the best way to kind of get the message across. Because now I've left them, in this particular case, with a mental trigger. And the next time they see a kid in the back seat strapped in, they're probably going to think about, child locks. What are the equivalent in the workplace that can cause me trouble?
So cool. Well, and it seems like as we start to land the plane today here, Conor, it seems like these micro goals are very intentional. They're something that you have to wake up and practice. You have to have it in the forefront of your mind. So whether it's the compliment, it's hearing thank you, it's addressing somebody, it's the positivity, or it's the smile, those are really things that you have to practice. Do they eventually just become second nature and then they just become part of you? Is that what you've noticed for people?
That's the general reaction I get. The one I think that where people feel it make the most progress on is the addressing people with their name. That it really resonates with them straight away, and I regularly get comments back on that. The other one that I get comments back on is just hearing the words "thank you." They were probably the two that kind of come up the most often. I do get it that, as some people might say, I try to give myself a micro goal to put a smile on someone's face every day. I'm not a funny person. You don't have to be funny to do this, I think. But that one kind of people struggle a little bit with. But in general, though, what I'm finding is that these things, I love the word that you mentioned, intentional. It's a word I regularly use in my presentations. If you want to change something, you've got to do something to change it. It ain't going to happen on its own. And I think if you want to do something, you've got to be intentional. And when you're intentional and you see yourself making progress and you see the vibe around you changing, hopefully better employee engagement, better employee retention, etc., you will realize the power of intentionality. And that is why I kind of like the CHAPS acronym, because it's so easy for people to remember. I remember a couple of months back I phoned a lady who I presented to. She was at a conference I spoke at, and she said, "Conor, give me a phone call in a few months' time." So I phoned her. She was down in the Maryland area, and I said, "Hi, let's call her Mary Louise. Mary Louise, Conor Cunneen here. I met you. I spoke at an event a couple of months ago." Her immediate reaction was, "Oh, Conor, hi, how are you? I have the CHAPS acronym on a notepad here on my desktop." And I thought, wow, this is about 5 months when I spoke to her, kind of thing. So that's just an example of the power of the acronym. Keep it simple, be intentional, and you will be able to create a better work environment. And Dave, I really do believe that in the home environment with your spouse, family, kids, it can really be a powerful tool to improve relationships as well.
Absolutely. Wow, that's so cool. So, one last question, Connor, and I'm gonna let you go. So, tip of the day, from you, we could be something that we've already talked about. It could be something on your heart. What would you share as your tip of the day for everyone listening?
I think the tip of the day is that people mirror other people's reactions. So, for instance, if I go into a meeting and I'm kind of all guns blazing walking into that meeting, what's going to happen? The whole meeting goes defensive immediately. If I walk into a meeting kind of trying to be relaxed and I say to myself, all right, let's say we've got a pretty difficult meeting coming up here, but I do know that if I use the CHAPS acronym, for instance, and I compliment a few people in the room, hear the words thank you, I address them with their name, use a positive word to say, hey, things went actually well last week, and find some way to put a smile on their face. I do know that that can make a difference. So if I say to myself, I'm going to walk into that room and I'm going to use the CHAPS concept, I'm going to walk in feeling and looking a bit more relaxed. Human beings mirror human beings' reaction. So if I'm walking in a little bit more relaxed, I think the people in the room will react positively to that. If I walk in brusque, all guns blazing, suddenly it's kind of. So I think what people should try and remember is human beings mirror human beings' reaction. So whatever reaction I'm going to come to this session with is going to be reflected with the people on the other side of the desk as well.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. Connor, if somebody wants to connect with you direct, learn more about you, what's the best place for people to go?
Best place for people to go is the website. Dave is IrishmanSpeaks. Oh, it's that site again, isn't it? Yeah, IrishmanSpeaks. Yeah, .com. I'm on LinkedIn, IrishmanSpeaks, Conor Cunneen as well. And I'm now pushing content out on Instagram and on TikTok as well. I've got a lot of content on YouTube, and that's where I actually get business from time to time as well. So IrishmanSpeaks, the name is Conor Cunneen. My email is cc@irishmanspeaks.com. But it's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you, Dave, and I really enjoy the time here. I actually tell people you're up in Milwaukee, yes?
Yes.
Yeah, I tell people that this is the back road from Naperville, Illinois, up to Milwaukee. So
Yeah.
Illinois is a bankrupt state, and we couldn't have can't afford
Oh,
to
yeah.
put
Well,
anymore.
hey, you're always welcome on this side of the border, dude. There's
Yeah, I'm a
always good
Packers
things
fan.
going.
I'm a Packers fan living in Chicago, but that's been easy for the last 20 years. Mightn't be
There
going,
you go.
but we'll see.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome. So, hey, listening, for people listening, I just want to make sure and encourage you to jump on Connor's website, connect with him on LinkedIn, but really take to heart what we talked about. I mean, we invested some time on thinking about your people, your performance, and your productivity. And just, rather than jump into your next thing, just take a minute and just really think about one thing that you want to be intentional with. I want to change X about my life, about my work, whatever, just one small little course correction. Otherwise, our time here has been in vain. And we just want you to be one step closer to getting better. And thank you again, Connor, so much for hanging out with us. And can't wait to keep hearing about you. And if you're ever up in this neck of the woods speaking, let me know. I'd love to watch you. And again, thanks for everything.
Thank you, Dave, and good luck with the program and the show. Really enjoyed the chat. Take care. Stay well.